If you are what you say you are, a superstar, then have no fear. The camera's here and the microphones, and they wanna know. Yeah, a fresh, cool young Lou trying to catch his microphone.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree. But whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Thank you to all of the people who join me on X, who join me on Facebook, who join me on Instagram, who join me on YouTube, on Twitch, on the Football Game Plan Facebook page, on the Bleacher Brothers Twitter and YouTube pages. I really do appreciate all of you. Keep running the numbers up. Keep subscribing to all of those platforms. It only helps us to continue to grow and continue to give you the content that you know that we love to give you on a regular basis. It's an interesting Monday. Lots to dive into, but I felt it was only right to start here. I believe that Stephen A. Smith might be the greatest user, executor of the sandwich method that I have ever seen in my life. If you're not sure what the sandwich method is, the sandwich method is a method of feedback that is based on sandwiching criticism in between praises. This is what Stephen A. has done his entire life. This is what Stephen A. has made a name for himself off doing. Stephen A. will say something along the lines of this. Listen, man, we know that Luka Doncic is box office. We know that he is must-see TV. We know that he is the next coming of Magic Johnson. But I got to be honest with you. I got to keep it real. He's the worst defender I've ever seen in my entire life. He doesn't move his feet. He doesn't get back down on the court. He doesn't stop anybody. What good is it if he's getting 30 a game and 10 and 10 if he's giving up 28, 8 and 8 on the other end? But don't get me wrong. He's a legendary. He might be the best basketball player in the world offensively. But defensively, he leaves something to the imagination. I would say that Luka Doncic has a chance to go down as one of the greatest basketball players in the world. But it's just that one thing. See, that's the type of stuff that Stephen A. will do. And he has made a career off of it, right? So then when you try to go back and call Stephen A. out on that, when you try to call him out on that type of thought process, he'll just say, oh, I said that he was the best player in the world. I said that he was box office. I said that he could be one of the greatest ever. But nobody listens to that. They only listen to the criticism. Yes, Stephen A. That's how the sandwich method works. The praise is put there to lessen the blow of the criticism. But when your criticism is so wild, is so crazy, is so out there that people have no other choice but to speak on it, you can't hide behind the praise that you only put there so that nobody would talk about the ridiculous things that you said in the middle. If I make an ice cream sandwich, it doesn't matter how good the cookies are on the outside if the ice cream is trash. So Stephen A. decided that he was going to take a shot at Will Smith. He was going to take a shot at Will Smith because in his mind, he does not believe that Will Smith has paid enough of a penance to black people about him slapping Chris Rock. He brought up a bunch of things, and I want to get into a couple of them because I feel this is important, because this is the type of stuff that Stephen A. does that has turned him into the caricature of the guy that I believe the culture used to root for, and now widely the culture roots against. Right? For all the great things that Stephen A. has done, for all of the ways that he has opened doors for black people in the space, for all of the ways that he has employed and given a platform to black people, for all of the ways that he has bigged up black people, he's also torn them down at every single turn. Every time he had a chance, he has torn them down. Every time he had a chance to build one up, he decided to go the other way. Remember what he did to Kyrie Irving. He's never apologized about it. Yet, he said that Will Smith needs to sit down and explain why he slapped Chris Rock on national television. But what he was really saying is he's got to sit down and explain to white America why he hit someone on a predominantly white, another black man on a predominantly white telecast, because he would not have dared hit a white man. That's what he was really saying. He tried to tiptoe around it, but we don't tiptoe around it around here. He was saying, yo, you slapped Chris Rock on a predominantly white broadcast, and the white Americans need to know, because they're not smart enough to pick it up themselves, apparently, because they can't just figure out that there was a legitimate beef, apparently, that this was one of the most embarrassing moments of your life, apparently. No, you have to explain it. But then he tried to say that Will Smith had to explain it to us. And I don't know who Stephen A. is talking about, but we, the culture, we don't need explaining. We know exactly why he did what he did. Let me remind you that anytime there is an action, there are two people involved in it. Chris Rock had been making fun, right? Had been poking fun at Jada Pinkett Smith for as long as I can remember. All the little shots, I remember the G.I. Jane shots and the why is she here? Like, why is she worried about if Will is boycotting? She ain't never gonna be here. Like, I remember years after years after years of jokes at the expense of Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, what I've never heard is if Jada Pinkett Smith had done anything wrong to Chris Rock, or if Chris Rock just thought it was funny to continue to make fun of one of our luminaries, one of the women that in the black community was held up in the highest esteem. At one time, Jada was the it woman in black culture. She was her. I remember it was Halle Berry, and then Jada Pinkett came along, and it was Halle Berry, it was Jada Pinkett, right? Like, she was up there. But for some reason, Chris Rock continued to, and that was a man who had had enough of another man going at his wife and said, the next time you fix your lips to say something crazy about my wife, it's over. On sight. Every man, every black person in the world identifies with that. Even the ones who won't say it publicly because they have consenting interest, privately will say, we've all been to the point where we are, if you say one more thing, if you do one more thing, so Will Smith don't need to tell us nothing. He went on his platforms. He apologized publicly. Oh, put it to the same level. Will Smith is one of the most followed actors in all of Hollywood. He's one of the most followed people in all of the world. When he posts something, the world sees it. He apologized. He talked about working on himself. And even what Stephen A. said was, the guy is as close to perfect as we've ever seen. Okay, so he makes this one mistake, and now, as Stephen A. says, many people can't go out and support him anymore until he makes this right. Now, Stephen A. said that on the heels of it coming out that Bad Boys 4 had done over $100+ million over the weekend. It wasn't a long weekend. It wasn't a holiday weekend. It wasn't a weekend where people are incentivized to go to the movie theater. It was a regular, early June weekend. It wasn't 4th of July weekend. It wasn't Labor Day. It wasn't Memorial Day. It wasn't Father's Day. It wasn't Mother's Day. It wasn't Juneteenth. It wasn't any of those things happening on a weekend. It was just a regular old weekend. And Bad Boys 4, Bad Boys 4 did $56 million domestically and over $104 million worldwide. First weekend. Can somebody please explain to me, like I'm a 2-year-old, who's not going to watch his movies? Hey, by the way, as Stephen A. was saying that, every black person, myself included, was coming out who's seen the movie, telling everybody who would listen that this is the best Bad Boys since the original. Every black person that I know who is in the space, who's out in the space, who has a voice. LeBron James just came out and said it was phenomenal. Cinematography, phenomenal. Took his whole family. I haven't seen a bad review from a black person, from a white person, from any person about this movie, which means the steam ain't going to stop in the first week. This is probably going to do the most numbers of any Bad Boys ever. And yet Stephen A. is telling us that Will Smith still owes more because he was one of our heroes. We looked up to him. Stephen A. clearly didn't do the research before he said, hey, I feel this way, and a lot of black people do. He clearly didn't look at the numbers before he said that, right? But this has been the problem with Stephen A. and his takes, especially since he's become all-powerful Stephen A. Smith. He hasn't done the research. He hasn't been a journalist. And yet every time you call him out on saying certain stuff, he will lean on the fact that it's journalism. Well, let me remind you, Stephen A., of what journalism is, right? Journalism isn't just looking at a message on your phone and then telling the people what came across your phone. Real journalism is looking at a message on your phone, doing research to try to find others, usually two, that will corroborate the story. It's trying to find somebody that will be willing to stand on business and say it with their chest, meaning not be anonymous, to corroborate your anonymous source's story. It's not just going, hey, yo, listen, I just got it from a source who hit me and said Jaylen Brown would have more would be considered better and would have more marketing, but he's not marketable. He would be more popular, but he's not marketable. He would be considered a superstar, but he's not marketable. It would behoove him to say that before he said stuff like, oh, well, he's been at the forefront of pushing WNBA and women's sports, because he hasn't been at the forefront. Not never. Stephen A. 100% comes out and tells you that he has to lean into the stuff that gets ratings. He's told you that. He doesn't make any apologies about it. You know why? Because he tried it the other way once and got fired. So when he came back to ESPN, hat in hand, yes, sir, no, sir, I got you, sir. When he came back to ESPN and played by the rules, he saw his star. When he moved for them, when he became more of a company man, when he always, and he says this is not my words, when he always thought about the ESP, the four letters before himself, when he put his employer first, he had success. Well, guess what the employer didn't give a damn about? The WNBA. Why do you think that a lot of WNBA games are not on ESPN and the family of networks? Why does it need to be on all of these different platforms? Because ESPN wasn't giving it the love it deserved. And neither was Stephen A. The reason that you see so much talk about the WNBA now is because Caitlin Clark is a lightning rod for the WNBA. It's not because the WNBA is good. See, notice that none of the conversations on First Take have been about how good the WNBA is. It's only been about conversational points surrounding the lightning rod. Why? Because that's what Stephen A. cares about. He cares about continuing to be the #1 rated show in all of sports television and sports debates. He cares about him. He cares about Stephen A. Smith. Now, does this mean, as I do my Stephen A., does this mean that he doesn't do a lot for other people? Does this mean that he doesn't put people in a position to win? I'm not saying that. I would never say that. I'm looking at Shannon Sharpe, who had a nice comfortable pillow to land on when he was ousted from Fox Sports 1. I'm looking at the women that he's putting in places, but I'm also looking at Mad Dog Russo, who should not be on television. He's terrible. I'm looking at people who don't have a personality that keep getting opportunities to go on there. And then I look at all of the faces that fell by the wayside, that Stephen A. didn't have anything to say about, that he just said in private or on other people's platforms, man, it's tough. It's tough out here, Like, be a freedom fighter or don't be a freedom fighter. You can't toe the line. You can't be a double agent. Stephen A. Smith, for all intents and purposes, is a double agent. He's playing both sides. One side knows it. One side understands that he can't be trusted. One side understands that he has ulterior motives, that he's selfish. And guess what? It's the culture. I make it a point to not try to kick the back end of any black people who are really out here thugging it, trying to do it, like really putting on it. And I try my hardest not to. But when they continue to kick our backs in, it is time for us to shoot back, metaphorically speaking. If words have power, then Stephen A. has been spewing his power and all over the place at a negative clip. You know what Stephen A. has been banging the drum on? Caitlin Clark making the U.S. Olympic team. You know what Stephen A. has not said a word about? He didn't say a word about Nneka Ogwumike. He didn't say a word about Arika Boonwale. He didn't say a word about Candace Parker not making the things. And if he did, it wasn't a full-on 30-minute segment on First Take. It wasn't a full-on segment on First Take. It wasn't debated ad nauseum on First Take. Arike Ogunbowale, that is how you pronounce her name. It was Arike Ogunbowale, who got left off of the U.S. team this year. Didn't hear Stephen A. Smith say a word about it. You know what he's talking about? Caitlin Clark. You know why he's talking about it? Because eyeballs are going to be there. He's telling you what he cares about. Out there, ladies and gentlemen, I am not the biggest platform, but he's telling you what he cares about. He's not even hiding it. He says that Caitlin Clark should be on the U.S. team because it should be about growing the game because she's popular. And that's what people are talking about. Not because she's the best. Not because she's the best. Imagine, right? Imagine in contract negotiations that Stephen A. Smith is about to go through with ESPN. He's going to go in there and he's going to ask for the same type of money that they're giving old boy over there. I don't have to say the name. You know it. He's going to go over there and ask for Pat McAfee money. He's going to want Pat McAfee money. And they are going to Caitlin Clark him. They're going to use his thought process on why Caitlin Clark should be on the U.S. team the same way for him versus Pat McAfee. Hey, man, more eyeballs are on McAfee. Is he as good as you at what he does? Maybe not. But the eyeballs are there. The talk is there. When we send Pat McAfee somewhere, the people come out. When we send you somewhere, some people show up. But when we send Pat McAfee, the same logic that he's using, for Caitlin Clark to be on the USA team is the logic that is going to be used to move him out of ESPN, to make him feel like he was undervalued, not appreciated. And you know what ESPN will continue to do? It'll continue to move on. Because that's what they do. So when you get to the position of power, while you have it, you got to not only just open the door and let some people in, you got to kick that bitch in. You got to tear the hinges off so that the floodgates can just open up. But that's not what Stephen A. does. Stephen A. is very much a gatekeeper. He lets in who he wants to let in at the times that he wants to let them in, with the understanding that he will get the clout and the love and the admiration for doing so. Oh, while all of this was going on, guess who was the executive producer in charge of putting everybody on? He's going to let you know it was him. He's going to let you know it is by the grace of Stephen A. that you have these positions you have. And all the while, he will ask others for humility. He had the nerve to tell two women on his broadcast today that they need to change how they do things if they want to make money in this business, because they had the audacity to stand on meritocracy as opposed to favoritism based on popularity. That is something you could tell people in private. That is not something that you put out there in front of the world to make them look like they don't understand how this game works. Guess what, Stephen A? They know how the game works. You know how they know how the game works? Because they watched you go through it. They watched you try to be authentically you and get fired. They watched as ESPN gave you your show, you became a megalomaniac, and they got you out of there. You were as urban or as hip hop and as before they were ready for it. Before George Floyd, you were doing that, and they got you out the paint. They brought you back and relegated you to radio status, where the loud talking blowhards go. Where I would like to go. I'm a loud talking, sometimes blowhard. Guess what? Stand on your square. You got the second opportunity and you didn't stand on business. You didn't keep it cute. Skip Bayless didn't leave first, wasn't pushed out of First Take. He left for more money because he thought in his hubris he could recreate what you had over there at Fox. You didn't elevate. You took over first and you kept it first. And you kept it first with the same type of thought process. You didn't get the white boy out of there because you were trying to bring a brother in there. That's not why you got him out. You got him out because he was a threat to your livelihood. Because people out here in these streets were saying that he was more black than you. You can say I was bored. You can say I was all of these things. That's cap, my guy. You were offended by his very existence because people out there in the culture looked at him as being more of a rider than you were. That didn't fit right with your soul. So you had to cleanse him away. You had to get him out of there. You essentially blew up his career. Oh, well, he landed on another show. Hey, bro, that's not helping when you take me from the number one show on a network to a show of upstarts that keeps on switching in people in and out, that's trying to replace a legendary show. You didn't do me a favor. You sent me to the wolves to get eaten. And that's what Stephen A. did. And forever, instead of having another permanent host, you know what he did? He made himself the star. There gets no more egomaniac than that. He made himself the star. First Take, Cold Pizza, right, was always debate versus two common opponents, like two opponents that was the same every day. They might bring somebody else in as a guest, and then it became Stephen A. and friends. It became Stephen A. and opponents. And when he would say stuff like, oh, if you think you good, come debate me. We can't, because as you so eloquently told us, you're the one who chooses the people who come on and the people who don't. You're willing to look bad, right? You're willing to look like you might be off, but only the white people. When it comes to the black people that come on there, you need to be the king intellectual. When the white guys come on there, you're willing to acquiesce. You're willing to be the foil. You're willing to be the heel. When the black people are on there, you ain't trying to stay that. You ain't trying to rock like that. That energy that you have for Chanae, that energy that you have for Monica McNutt, that energy that you have for the women or for the black men that you have on that show, You don't have that same energy for the white men on your show. Just like you were talking about Will Smith and what he was willing to do to the black man that he would not have been willing to do to the white comedians, is the same thing we could say about you, Stephen A. It's the same thing. Because when JJ Redick comes on there and carves y'all up because y'all don't know a tenth of the basketball that he does, you're quiet. You don't never come back the way that you come back against Monica McNutt, the way that you come back against Shanae, the way you come back against, even if he ever does it, against Shannon Sharpe. But you brought Shannon Sharpe on just to be another you. I've always been a fan of Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith is one of the reasons I wanted to be a journalist. I'm talking about Philadelphia Inquirer Stephen A. Smith. I'm talking about the Stephen A. Smith that was a featured columnist for the Inquirer. I'm talking about the Stephen A. Smith whom I grew up with, whom I looked at and said, that was the guy. That's who I want to be. A great writer, somebody who has the pulse of the culture, somebody who has boots on the soil. He played a little bit of ball. Might not have been the best, but he understands the game. Was perfect me. That was the perfect me. When I knew for a fact that I wanted to be a journalist, he was my North Star. Guys like him and Michael Wilbon and Jemele Hill. And as crazy as it sounds, Jason Whitlock back in the day. I looked at these black faces in our world, in the journalism world, and that's who I wanted to be. Writers who were then starting to transition over to TV and to radio. And I said, oh, I can do everything. I don't have to just be the guy behind the scenes. That's who Stephen A. was. That's not who Stephen A. is. Now it's lowest common denominator, low-hanging fruit, hot button topic, stay on the surface area of it, only go deep when it's time to kick your own back in. That's who Stephen A. is now. And it's depressing. It's sad. It's not who I thought I would be rooting for. Now, it is not the person that I want saying that he represents us. So, Stephen A., when you start talking about what Will Smith needs to do, or what these ladies that you have on your show need to do, don't talk for us. Talk for yourself. Speak for yourself. Give your own opinion. Don't attach the culture to it. Don't attach us to it. We don't rock with you like that. We don't love you like you think we love you. You haven't earned that love in years. And every time you have a moment of clarity where you pop out from the sunken place and you actually say something real, we go, oh my gosh, it's clearly an act. Every time that you pop out and you do the thing that we knew you should have been doing all along, we go, this is how we know it's not real on there. That what he's giving us is a caricature. It's a big head cartoon version of who he really is. So when players will say, oh man, y'all just don't know Stephen A, a stand-up dude. When other people go, man, if y'all just knew Stephen A, we've been trying to know him for 20 years. We've been trying to know him for 20 years. And this is what he gives us. This is what he gives us. Guy gets in trouble. Gets in trouble for marijuana use. Stay off the weed. What? Now marijuana's legal. Josh Gordon has had his entire life imploded because of marijuana use. Don't believe me? Do the math on it. The man was smoking weed. They told him, hey, you get busted for smoking weed. So what does he have to do? He has to find something other than weed. So now he starts drinking. Now he's on the drugs. Now he's on the other drugs that might not pop up on a drug scan. The drugs that they're giving you in the locker room. But now he's addicted to drugs. He's addicted to that high because he wasn't allowed to stay on the non-addictive thing that was regulating him as a person and helping to manage his pain. Any sympathy from Stephen A. Smith? Absolutely not. Stay off the weed. Kyrie Irving trying to express himself and how he feels as a black man in this country. Any sympathy from Stephen A? Nope. Sandwich method time. We know that he's one of the best that ever do it. He is magic with the ball in his hand, but he is an absolute moron when he's blah, 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 blah. Yeah! I tell you all this, ladies and gentlemen, not because I want to beat up on Stephen A. I tell you this as a hurt fan. I tell you this as someone who expects more from the people that they revered. I tell you this as somebody who's never been perfect, never claimed to be perfect, but has accepted responsibility for his imperfections and has tried to continue to move forward. And every time I have to go back and make and redo things for things that I have done in my past, I'm saddened by it. Why? Because how long is it supposed to last? Stephen A. has been completely and totally forgiven for the stuff that he's done in the past publicly. He doesn't have to answer for that at all. And yet at every single turn, he wants people to answer for things that they did in the past that they already apologized for. The hypocrisy of this man. But that's what the arrogance will do to you. That's what the hubris will do. He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks he's untouchable without realizing he's out of touch. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We come back. We're going to get into Caitlin Clark, and we're going to get into the USA Olympic team selection. This is Talk Spicy. Stay tuned.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. Make sure you go ahead and follow me on all the places that you follow people on social media at Gene Clemens, the YouTube channel at Coach Gene Clemens. And I greatly appreciate that. The U.S. basketball women's Olympic team was announced, and there was controversy. Admittedly so, like of course there was going to be controversy, right? Like when you look at the names of the players in the pool, you can't help but know that there's going to be backlash when you see who made the team and who didn't make the team, right? I think this is the part that I don't understand, and I'll address the elephant in the room, because I think you have to look at these things head on. I don't particularly pretend to know what goes into the selection of the women's team. I'm going to say this: you can't argue the women's team selection because they continuously win championships, right? I think that would be foolhardy to argue the selection of the team based off the fact that they win championships. Now, here is where you can argue. If you're saying that it doesn't matter because even beyond the men, like maybe double, triple what the men are, the women are going to win this championship regardless, right? Like they're going to win this championship because the United States just has the best players hands down. Like it's not even close, right? So if we're saying that the United States just has the best players hands down, and it's not even close, then it's not then we're not surprised by whoever makes the team, right? So like when we look at the roster for this team, we don't have to debate everybody. Like we don't have to debate everybody. A'ja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, those are the two best players in the WNBA, right? Alyssa Thomas, she might be the most versatile player in the WNBA. Nafise Collier, fantastic forward. Jewel Lloyd fills it up from outside. Kelsey Plum, she's a shooter. Jackie Young, she's a shooter, right? Chelsea Gray is the best. Chelsea Gray is the best point guard in the league. Sabrina Ionescu is one of the best shooting guards in the league, right? Kalia Cooper, great, right? So when you look at this, it really comes down to a couple names. It comes down to Brittany Griner, who has not played this year, who's been injured, but this is the reason why Brittany Griner goes, because Brittany Griner just came back and immediately upon re-entering the WNBA is one of the most dominant WNBA players in the game. And she plays a position at center that you just don't see a lot of in the game. And we know in the women's game, centers still matter. Right? She came right back in off injury, a 30 ball. Easy. So we get it. Rim protector, preeminent center. There's no more Sylvia Fowles. She is the preeminent American center. Boom. Cool. Now we're talking about Diana Taurasi. And here is where the Caitlin Clark people get on their high horse, because they say that Caitlin Clark should be on this team regardless. And I say, if that's what you want to do, then just make it plain. Right? This is what I want you to do. If you want Caitlin Clark to be on this team, I want you to make an announcement that the only reason Caitlin Clark is on the U.S. team is because she is going to help to build and expand the game. That's it. Don't say she earned it, because she didn't. She didn't earn it. Don't say that she was worthy because of meritocracy. She didn't. That would be affirmative action, ladies and gentlemen. And as so many of you know, there are many people, the people who are saying that she should be on this team, the people who are trying to politicize her not being on this team, are the same people who are not in favor of inclusion, of affirmative action. What's the thought process behind affirmative action? The thought process behind affirmative action is that you get a chance to grow the diversity of the school, right? And therefore growing the popularity of the school. How is that not Caitlin Clark? How would she not be affirmative action in this case? Remember, affirmative action is not simply based off race. Affirmative action was also based off of socioeconomic standards, right? It wasn't just always based off race. If we're talking about the way it was used in our country, it's not just about race. It would be about affirmative action was also used to seek out people who were not in the geographical area of the school. Hey, we want to build our national brand. So we're going to let people from Florida into our school in Massachusetts and people from Texas into our school in Massachusetts and Nebraska and Iowa and Arizona and South Dakota. We're going to lower the standards for them because we know we have enough people in our area in Massachusetts to go to this school. We want to get the people from outside of the area. So we want to lower it a little bit in order to allow everyone to feel as if they have the opportunity to attend this university. That's how it worked. See, we only ever talk about race because it's easy to see. It's the low-hanging fruit. It's the Stephen A stuff, right? It's the Skip Bayless stuff. It's the Shannon Sharp stuff. We want to roll with the low-hanging fruit. But the truth is, if you want to put Caitlin Clark on the USA team when she is not one of the 12 best basketball players in the WNBA, in the United States, when she's not one of the best 24 basketball players in the United States, where you could make an argument that she's not one of the best 36 American players in the WNBA. Like, if that's what you want to do, then cool, right? But make sure that you say this is an affirmative action move to grow the game. Make sure that she knows it. Make sure that the world knows it. You know why? Because I don't ever want to hear, I never again want to hear, oh, we don't do that because our country should be built on a meritocracy. Our country should be built on a meritocracy. Don't give me, oh, well, this helps the WNBA. It doesn't. Team USA is Team USA. It existed before the WNBA existed. Oh, well, this is going to help grow the women's game. How? Who is Caitlin Clark playing over? So when she gets in, it's going to be garbage time, right? Cool. Now, again, if you're telling me you want to do it just to grow the game, affirmative action. Don't just take off one, take off several. Don't just take off one, take off several. Because if you want to grow the game, the way to grow the game is to go young. Right? So let's hit this affirmative action and let's get Caitlin Clark. Let's get the Bayou Barbie Angel Reese. Right? Let's get the blonde bomber. Let's get her off the 3-on-3 team. Cameron Brink, let's get her off the 3-on-3 team and get her up here to the big show. We'll take off Diana Taurasi. We'll take off Alyssa Thomas. We'll take off Nafise Collier. They're still going to win the championship, right? They're still going to win it. And now, don't just put them girls on the team and have them sit the bench like you did LeBron and Wade and Melo. Let them get some run. If that's what you want to do, then do it. But say it. I guarantee you, Caitlin Clark won't take the spot. Angel Reese won't take the spot. Cameron Brink won't take the spot. You know why? Because they want to earn it by being one of the 12 best women in the WNBA. They want to earn it. They don't want to just be given. They don't want to just hand it to them. That's part of the reason why we had a beef with Sabrina Ionescu, because she was just handed it. But this isn't the first time, right? Because there are people who deserve it more than Caitlin Clark that did not make it. And Diana Taurasi does not deserve to be on this team. She's on this team as a legacy, but why? So she could break some record? Why? The women's national team, Team USA women's basketball, has a history of doing this very thing, of keeping people who are actually legitimately deserving of this honor. Arike Ogunbowale should be on this team. She's one of the best guards in the league. She's better than Jewell Loyd. Right? If we're talking about shooting guards, which Jewell Loyd essentially is, she's like a shooting point, right? She's better than Diana Taurasi right now, hands down. She's asked to do more than Kelsey Plum. She's asked to do more than Jackie Young. She's asked to do more than Sabrina Ionescu. She is the player on her team, and she's a baller. And if you start talking efficiency numbers with me, you're really going to lose because Diana Taurasi's there, right? But she's not on this, and it's not the first time. Oh, by the way, I heard some people talking about why Chelsea Gray was on there. She hasn't played all year. Chelsea Gray is the best point guard in the WNBA. That's why she's there. And by the time they get to late July, when the Olympics start, they expect for her to be back and playing. That's why. Team USA women's team, they have a history of leaving people off that should be on. In 2020, They had Sue Bird on the team. Sue Bird was 40 years old. Yeah, she was a starter, but she wasn't that work. She was just a good player on her team. 2020, 2021, that was the COVID year. They had her on there. They had Diana Taurasi on there. At 39 years old, she was not the work. She was still very good, but there were other guards who deserved the opportunity. They had Sylvia Fowles on that team. Sylvia Fowles was 39 years old. Yes, was she still decent? Yeah. But why are we making the Team USA a legacy play, right? This has been the norm for Team USA. There have been players who deserved to be on these teams. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just remind you, this 2021 team does not have Candace Parker on it. You want to know why it doesn't have Candace Parker on it? Because in 2016, they left Candace Parker off this team for a rookie Breanna Stewart. Candace Parker was the best player in the WNBA at this time. Maybe number 2. She might have been second, right? It might have been Maya Moore. Might have been Maya Moore. But they left her off this team. You know who else they left off this team and off of the 2020 team, 2021 team? They left Nneka Ogwumike off these teams. In 2016, Nneka Ogwumike was the player of the year, was the MVP, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe that was 2021. I forget. One of those years, she was the MVP of the year. The year they left Candace Parker off, she won MVP. The year that they left Nneka off, or one of the years that they left Nneka off, she was the reigning MVP. They have a history of leaving players who are deserving of this award off. I remember that year because they had people on the team that I said, oh, it's cool that they're on the team, but maybe that time it passed them by. They had Tamika Catchings on that team. I love Tamika Catchings, but time might have been not on her side. They had Angel McCoughtry on that team, on that 2016 team, and while she was still good, she wasn't Candace Parker. Remember, Candace Parker walked into the WNBA and was her. She's one of the only people to come directly out of college and ball, like hardcore ball. Like, I'm her immediately. Right? I'm not second fiddle to anyone. I'm her right now. But in 2016, they didn't make it. When you go back, you can go all the way back to 2012 and 2008. You know, in 2008, Becky Hammond, who had been playing, right, and wanted to be on the women's team, she didn't think she was going to get a chance. So, knowing that she wanted to play in the Olympics, she had dual citizenship with Russia. She went to play with Russia because she played ball over in Russia. And newsflash, these women make more money overseas than they do here. That's for another day. Why can't we have that conversation, Stephen A? Oh, I know why, because that's not how TV works. They'll tell you, him and Shannon Sharpe are quick to tell you that's not how TV works. In 2008, Becky Hammond went about the business of going and making herself available to play for Russia. After she had made herself available to play for Russia, they came back to her last minute and said, hey, we want you to play for the U.S. team. Because she's a G and upstanding, she said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to turn my back on them because they gave me the opportunity when you guys wouldn't. She went on to play for them in 2008 and 2012. This is nothing new. This is nothing new for USA women's teams. They have been messing up the cha-cha forever. I remember that 2016 specifically because the thought process is that Gino Auriemma wanted as many Connecticut Huskies on that team as possible. And so he froze out girls who were not on that team. He froze them out. And because he was Gino Auriemma, they just let him rock with it. They've been making these types of mistakes for the women for a long time, but it's been mistakes made between talent and talent, between not just talent and talent, because Caitlin Clark is really talented, but the elite level talent in the WNBA or in professional women's sports versus elite level talent in the WNBA or professional sports. Given the excuse that, oh, well, the men's team put Christian Laettner on there is a stupid excuse. You want to know why? Because when they put Christian Laettner on there, every single person said he did not deserve to be on there over Alonzo Mourning or Shaq. Everybody, every single person. There's not one that said he should be on there. Even the people who put the team together said, you know, in hindsight. Not one of them. The reason that the WNBA has been successful is because that the women's team has not lost in forever, is because they have not compromised talent for popularity. Supposedly, that's what they'll tell you, right? Now, again, if Caitlin Clark was on this team, would I have an issue with it? Absolutely not. Because I think her playing with all of those really good players is only going to make her job easier, right? She's going to look better. Did she earn it? No. And I believe, see, this is the thing I love. The only people that are complaining about Caitlin Clark and her situation in the WNBA are not named Caitlin Clark. The only people who are complaining about Caitlin Clark not being on the national team are people not named Caitlin Clark. I 100% think that if she and Cameron Brink and Angel Reese and some of the other youngins that are coming, I think if they continue to do what they've been doing, you're going to see a 2028 Olympic team that looks completely different than the one that looks right now. In 4 years, if Caitlin Clark is her, she'll be undeniable. Cameron Brink will be undeniable. Angel Reese will be undeniable. Juju will be undeniable. Undeniable. Paige Beckers, undeniable. Flau'jae, undeniable. They are coming, and they are coming in waves. They're coming in droves. They're not just coming in ones anymore. Like it was once upon a time, it was like, okay, the 4 or the 3 or the 2 Connecticut girls and somebody else, right? Or the 1 Connecticut girl. Now they're coming in waves. The WNBA is going to have to make room for them because their old guards not going to want to give up their spots as easy. So they're going to have to make room for them. And the USA team is going to have, their selection is going to have to become a lot more open to skewing younger, to not just replaying the hits. This is what got in the way of USA women's national team on soccer. Not bringing in the younger talent. The difference is that in soccer, the world's close. And in women's basketball, the world's not close. But I don't think there's not a person in the world that wants to be on this team for affirmative action reasons. And that's exactly what y'all are saying you want Caitlin Clark to be on the team for. Affirmative action? After you just told us that schools should get rid of their inclusion, their diversity and equity and inclusion You're saying that these schools should get rid of that. You're saying that schools should get rid of affirmative action. You're saying that businesses should not have affirmative action. And then you want this business to use affirmative action? It's shameful. Stephen A should be ashamed of himself. Shannon Sharp should be ashamed of himself. And anybody else trying to use Caitlin Clark being a straight white woman as a reason why she didn't make this team, you should be ashamed of yourself too. Sabrina Ionescu, straight white woman. Right? I mean, if we're keeping it a buck, Kelsey Plum, straight white woman. What are we saying? As a matter of fact, if we're actually out here talking about people's sexuality, which is crazy when you really think of it, Jackie Young straight, as far as I know, right? Why would I need to know anything else? Asia Wilson straight, as far as I know. Drew Lloyd straight, as far as I know. Right? Why would I care? Why does it matter? Why would you care? And why would you try to politicize it? Why would you try to make it political? That's crazy to me. Like, that's crazy to me. And it should be crazy to you, but it's not. You know why? Because you guys don't care. You don't care. You don't really care about women's basketball. You're just here because that's the fun thing to do right now. You're not here because you care about the game. You're not here because you're watching the game. You're here because you think it's fly, because everybody's talking about it. It's the soup du jour. It's the hot new restaurant. It's the cool bar that just opened up. Right? Because if you cared, you do a little bit more research into it. A little bit more. That's all it takes. Instead, nope, let's just yell and scream and talk about how they missed the opportunity. Opportunity to do what? Tell me what the tangible takeaway would be for the WNBA if Team USA put Caitlin Clark on the women's team. Tell me what the ramifications would be for women's professional basketball in the United States if Caitlin Clark was on that team. Is it going to spawn? They already love women's basketball at other places more than they do here. That's the part that nobody's talking about. They love it in China. They love it in France. They love it in Spain. They love it in Russia. And in a lot of those places, these stars have a chance to make more money there than they do here. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we'll be talking about the NBA Finals and what I think is wrong with the commentating from the NBA Finals. This is Talk Spicy.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have anybody to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Okay, men. This is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. No, you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. News broke today that Dan Hurley was going to turn down the opportunity to be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. According to sources, ESPN, and I think this is coming from Woj, if I'm not mistaken, that Dan Hurley turned down a 6-year, $70 million offer and will return to UConn to chase a third straight national title. I can only assume, right? I can only assume that UConn came close to the 11 million a year or 11 plus million a year that Hurley was going to get from the Lakers. But here's why I think it's a mistake on Hurley's part, right? Because like it goes bad for everyone in college. Like you can't sustain it, and UConn's not going to be able to play the same game that everyone else is going to play because they don't have the resources to play that same game, right? And the reason they don't have the resources to play that same game is because they don't have a massive football brand backing them up, right? It's a different level of money when you've got massive football brand behind you. The teams with the massive football brands are going to be the ones who are able to get the talent at the level that you're going to need in order to win this thing, right? And to keep these kids. So while he might very well go there and hit a three-peat, right? And become just a treasure and all that, it's going to wane. And when he's not winning, they're going to get him out of there. But if he had taken the Lakers job, right? It doesn't matter how long he's with the Lakers. He's getting that $70 million. That's guaranteed money. So let's say he spends the 6 years there and he's not successful and they fire him. He's $70 million to the good plus whatever he makes in endorsements because he's in LA, right? And he's the flavor of the month, especially those first couple of years with LeBron. If he thinks he can get it done with Bron and AD, if it doesn't work for him, he's going to go back to college and be able to pick his spot. He's going to do what this is a blueprint that's been out there for a long time. He could even stay in the league and just but maybe that's just not what he wants. Maybe this was something he did because it was a family decision. I'm not knocking the decision. I just think it was the wrong one. And not because I think he's the best Lakers coach or the best coach for the Lakers. I don't at all. Right? I think that Hurley comes with a little rigidity that is not appreciated in the NBA. I think it would need for him to be a little bit more flexible in what he does and how he does it. And for that reason, I don't think that's going to roll with him. So, I mean, shout out to him. He did what he loved. I wanted to talk about the NBA Finals, and I don't want to talk about the game because people have talked about the game ad nauseum, and also, you know, you're gonna hear me talking with Coach Witt here soon on our Zebra Stripes podcast coming up this week to talk about the league, you know, and the state of the game. I wanted to talk about the commentary because I have heard a lot of backlash about the commentary. I want to start this by saying that I love Doris Burke. I've always thought that she was great at her job. I think that JJ Redick brings a lot to the table. You know what neither one of them bring? Color. You want to know what the job is? This is not me making it up. This is their job. Their job is to be the color commentator. Right? There's a play-by-play guy, and then there are color commentators. Mike Breen is the play-by-play guy, and then you have color commentators. You want to know what you think about when you think about a color commentator? You think about personalities that understand the game, like outspoken personalities, colorful personalities, opinionated personalities, personalities that make you stand up and pay attention, right? I have been honored. I was honored to be the color commentator for college football games last year. It was my first year at the collegiate level doing color. I had to sit down, right, and make a decision. How did I want to be portrayed? Right? Do I want to be the guy who is coming up with shticks, or do I want to be the guy who gives it to you straight, right? Just the facts. And the truth is, what I came up with, and it's funny, I came up with this probably right before we went on air. I said, yo, just be yourself. When you feel like there are stats needed, give the stats. When you feel like there is X's and O explanation, because that's my lane, right? When I feel like there's X's and O's that need to be explained, explain them. And when I feel like I just want to talk to the people like I'm talking to people in the barbershop, or I'm having an argument or a debate online about something, then do that. And thank God, the producers were very impressed with what I did. Still needed to clean up stuff, right? Because this is my first time on pro, but the personality showed through. I would tell you that, in my opinion, what's missing in this, NBA Finals is the color in the color commentating. It's the personality in the color commentating. Doris Burke is very straightforward. She's very do your job. JJ Redick is very calculated. He's very well read. He's very do your job. There's not a whole lot of wiggle for personality with those two. Juxtapose that with what you had in 2023 all the way back to 2027. You had Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy. Mark Jackson, personality, right? Got the New York in him, got the swagger. Mama, there goes that man. Hand down, man down. Why do I remember it? Because that was his shtick. That was his thing. Jeff Van Gundy, he was the straight man, right? It's almost like a comedy, right? Where you have somebody playing the straight man and someone playing the foil, and they work off each other. Ice Cube is really good at playing the straight man, and Kevin Hart playing off of that, right? Then juxtapose that with Kevin Hart and The Rock, where they were both kind of at certain times they were straight, and at certain times they were playing the foil, and they were going back and forth. You just saw that with Bad Boys. And shout out to Bad Boys, man. 104 million in the opening weekend on just a regular weekend. That's fantastic. But you saw that with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. Will Smith would be playing the straight. Martin Lawrence would be playing the comedic foil. And then Lawrence would be straight. And Will Smith would be playing a comedic foil. But you got that dynamic. And since 2007, it's been Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy minus a couple of years where Mark Jackson was busy, right? Bruce Bowen and Tim Legler were in there. Again, personalities. Before Mark Jackson was Hubie Brown. It was very dry. I remember it was very dry, very corny. Doc Rivers was there for a year. But before Doc Rivers, Bill Walton. Color, right? Personality. Doug Collins, when Doug Collins was there, it was cool, but get Bill Walton back in here. And before Doug Collins was Matt Gukas and Bill Walton. Personalities. Fratello, personalities. Magic Johnson, personalities. That's all the way back to the early 90s. Tommy Heinsohn. Tommy Heinsohn was a personality. Bill Russell, boring. Boring as a color commentator. He was no Tommy Heinsohn. Right? So when you look at what the NBA finals are missing, they're missing that flavor. They're missing that certain someone that makes it feel like they're having a conversation with you, like y'all are enjoying the game together. This does not feel like we're enjoying the game together. The color commentary feels like we're watching something and people are explaining it to us. Right? And while technically that's what you're supposed to be doing, if we feel like we're being lectured in a hall, right? If we feel like we're in a classroom, it doesn't ring the same. I was just having a conversation with my guys about this, talking about the Mind the Game podcast, where Shannon Sharp says that if all you're doing is X's and O's, it's not going to work. And I said, that's not true. I said, because that's a niche, right? That's going to work because there's enough people out here that just want that. I am very on you don't have to appeal to everybody. You just need to appeal to a loyal following, right? And with hundreds of millions of people in the United States alone, all I need is 1% of 1%. And I'm good. I'm great forever. So the Mind the Game podcast, where it's X's and O's, that's going to work. Why? Because they're going to do 12 episodes. If they decide to do it next year, who knows? But if they decide to bring it back, it's probably going to be episodic, or seasonal, meaning a few episodes, and then go away, refill the hunger, the desire for it, and then come back and hit them again. But the point is that, and it was a great point made. They said it has to be entertaining. And that's what the game has to be, right? We want you to give us information. We want you to tell us stuff, but we want to be entertained as well. And there's no entertainment value in the Doris Burke, JJ Redick combination. You can't put two straight men in the comedy. And when I say straight, I mean straight-laced, straight-faced, right? If you're thinking about it, in a comedy, there's always a straight, and then there's always the comedic foil. You can't have two comedic foils because they roll all over each other. They don't know how to play off of each other well enough. And you can't have two straight, because if you have two straight men, right, then You don't get the play. Pause, that's crazy, but you get what I'm saying. You don't get the feel, the entertainment value. You don't get the action. You don't get the action. And that's the problem with this production right now. The problem with this production is there's no action. There's no feel of enjoyment. Even when they're excited, they don't really seem that excited. Like, it doesn't come across the same as it came across before. And I think it might just be because, hey, this is their first time doing this. It's the first time that they're in this chair, right? They're both pros. They've both been doing it for a long time. But this is the first time they're in this chair at this level. And they don't want to mess it up, right? That could be it. I'm willing to allow for some grace. I'm willing to see it next year and maybe even the year after that. See how they grow, how much more comfortable they get. But the one thing I will say is that when Mark Jackson got to the finals, by the time he got to the finals, everybody knew the Mark Jackson catchphrase. By the time we got to the finals, everybody knew the catchphrases and the sayings from Bill Walton. That's what made them so colorful. We felt like we were in it with them. We felt like we were along for the ride. We didn't feel like as if we weren't allowed to be in it because it wasn't like a club for us, that we just had to look on the outside. Right? Like, I think that is something that we can't get by. That is something that we can't like forget about. Is that those guys took us on an adventure. They took us on a journey. They allowed us to come along with them. And when you allow people to come along with you, when they feel like they're in the boat with you, they're engaged, they're entertained. And that's what we're missing. Because it really should be, instead of saying color commentary, it should say entertaining commentary. It should say how can you give this to us in a way that's entertaining? I want to know that, A, they can't stop him off the dribble, but I want you to tell it to me in an entertaining way. Hey, he's got the ball on the string. You never hear that because that's not lingo that they use, but that's lingo that's used in sports that basketball people know, that other people would be interested in using as a visual. But we're not getting that. We're getting straight-laced answers. We're getting straight-laced responses. And that is why it's not inviting. That's why it's not endearing. That's what we're missing. Again, I don't think anyone's doing anything wrong. I think that people are playing the hand that they've been dealt. I think that people are playing the hand that makes sense to them, right? People are doing the things that make them who they are. JJ Redick became JJ Redick by playing a certain way. It was not a creative way. His game isn't creative. His game is formulaic. I'm going to run off these screens. Boom, 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 boom. Shot. Boom, pump, fake, dribble, shoot. Boom, pump, fake, dribble to the glass layup. There was no flair. There was no Jogue Bonita in his game. His beautiful game was the structure. Doris Burke has been a by the book kind of reporter, right? And so now, where you need a little bit more color, she's going to have to bring those parts of her personality out more. Do I think both are capable of it? Yeah. Because I'm sure that the way that they talk about the game when they're hanging out with their people is not the way that they're talking about the game now. But the way they're talking about the game right now is not the way that you would talk to your people, and that's the problem. When we listen to Bill Walton, when we listen to Mark Jackson, it sounds like what they would be saying to their homeboys if their homeboys were watching the game with them. Right? They just let us in. They just let us in. And that's what we need from them if they want to continue to, get better. But there's definitely been a difference. There's definitely been a lack of color. And I don't think people are wrong to feel a little bit disappointed. Right? I don't think people are wrong to feel a little disappointed. I do think that people need to allow grace. Ladies and gentlemen, we come back on Talk Spicy. We'll wrap this thing up for the day. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Stay locked.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I gotta tell you, I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Me too, but I'm glad we are.
Love Has No Labels and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and life experiences come together through conversation, and it feels good.
Wow, your story is so...
Interesting?
Yeah.
When people actually sit down, talk, and listen to one another, they can break down boundaries and connect as human beings. At lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep, you can listen to amazing, life-changing conversations and find simple tools to start a conversation of your own.
I know one thing. This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope, too.
Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together by having the courage to start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding.
Whoa!
Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back.
Woohoo! Gnarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie.
So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving.
A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me as always. Before we get up out of here, some quick hitters. It was just announced today that Mike Tomlin has signed a 3-year contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So all of you people out there who thought that it might be time for Mike Tomlin to move on, that it might be time for Mike Tomlin to step aside, that it might be over for Mike Tomlin. Nope. He's right back. And like I said before, like, if you're going to get rid of a Mike Tomlin, you got to have somebody to replace him, right? See, that's the thing. Everybody always wants, they always want to like fire people, but nobody ever wants to talk about who's going to replace the person. I never understand that. I never quite get the thought process that goes with, I want to get rid of X, but I don't have Y to replace him with. I want to get rid of X, but there's no Y. But if there's no Y, then what would you, why on earth would you want to get rid of X? I never understood it. Mike Tomlin, shout out to you. Salute. The best in the game, best doing it. Since there is no more Bill Belichick. Shout out to you and everything that you do, everything that you stand for, and how you've comported yourself in a position where they have given coaches the opportunity to grow and to continue to get better. You have grown, you've continued to get better, you've transformed, and you still produced on the field. You still produce teams that have won at a high level on the field. Shout out to you. Darren Waller announced his retirement yesterday, and he actually released his own video. If you want to go and listen to that, you definitely should. I think he talked about when the love is not there anymore, it's probably time to say goodbye. I had said that Darren Waller was a case of a guy who was brought in to do something and then not allowed to do what he was brought in to do. I think the blame for Darren Waller not being what he could have been with New York last year falls squarely on the coaching staff. And maybe not completely and totally their fault, but the blame has to go somewhere, and I think it is appropriate to place it there. Here's why. When we were watching in training camp, Darren Waller looked unstoppable. Why did he look unstoppable? Number one, they were targeting him, right? Number two, they were using him in ways that you don't normally see a tight end being used. He was being used, quite frankly, like a slot receiver. And I thought it was genius. I was like, oh, so you got this big dude who is not your traditional tight end in the fact that he's not like a physical run you over, type of guy. He's an athletic guy, long, a receiver converted, like a converted receiver, like use him that way, especially because he's had some issues with staying healthy, right? Get him out of the traffic, get him out of the muck and allow him to just, grow there. I saw that all training camp, him in motion, orbit return. Then we got into the game and we didn't see it until Wan'Dale Robinson came back. And then all of the stuff that I saw Darren Waller doing in training camp was the stuff that I saw them doing with Wan'Dale Robinson. And I said, oh, they made their choice. They made their choice because all of the ways that they were using Wan'Dale Robinson in that offense when he came back were the ways that I saw them using Darren Waller. And so then, and Darren Waller talked about it with me when I had a chance to speak to him in Las Vegas. He said that there was a game in Washington that he had tweaked something. If he had just shut it down for a week, he probably would have been good, but he pushed through it and it got worse and he had to miss several weeks, right? It's that small. Like, that's how small the margins are. That's how small the margins are. But when I hear people say that the Darren Waller experiment with the Giants was a failure, I just have to ask them, what's their definition of failure? They traded him for a conditional third round pick, right? Or a third round pick that they got as a compensatory pick, right? They traded him for a third round pick. Okay. He caught 56.8% of his passes, which was better than the previous 2 years with Las Vegas. He had 552 yards on 52 catches and a touchdown in an offense that had 3 different quarterbacks rolling through there, where he dealt with injury. He only started 11 games. I think he only really fully played in 10, maybe 9. Right? So when I'm thinking about that, it's like, is this really like a failure? What were they going to get with the third round pick that was going to be better? Like Wan'Dale Robinson, if you remember, right? Wan'Dale Robinson was a second round pick. He was a second round pick. You know what his stats were last year? 60 receptions, 525 yards, and a touchdown. And everybody's excited about him. Everybody's excited about what his future holds. He did less with more, and yet everybody's excited. And I like Wan'Dale. I think he's going to be a good fit in the total offense, but I just don't like the idea that Darren Waller was a failure, right? I don't like that idea that he was a failure when the recourse is that if he came back, you would have had him back again. And now that he's not coming back, you're going to have the money from him. And then I said that I didn't think the Giants were serious about bringing him back. And then I said that to the entertainer, who I like a lot, and then he just stole my take, and then just like completely ignored the fact that he stole it. I tried to point it out to him. He didn't even bother to look at it, but that's cool. Because that happens. And he probably didn't even know he was still in the take. He probably was just saying it as if he was getting that information and kind of made it his own. But I thought it was interesting because he wasn't talking that way before I said it. Then all of a sudden he was talking the exact same way I was talking. I thought that was interesting. Then he tried to change when I said, hey, he tried to make it seem as if I didn't say what I said, like I was saying something different, like he didn't understand what I was saying. He tried to interpret it a different way, which I thought was weird. But, I guess that's what happens. That's what happens in these worlds when you're giving takes about things. But shout out to Darren Waller. Let's not forget that at one point in time, Darren Waller was one of, if not, he was one of the best, most explosive tight ends in the game for 2 years straight. 90 receptions, 107 receptions, over 1,100 yards, over 11 yards a catch, over 12, almost 13 yards a catch for a tight end. That's crazy. His career numbers are 11.8 yards per catch. That's how good he's been when he's been on the field. He just couldn't stay on the field. That's all. Shout out to him, man. Anytime somebody gets a chance to go off and do the stuff that they really want to do, I'm proud of it. Hopefully he's taking care of his money. Hopefully he is in a great place mentally, with his divorce or with whatever's going on in his personal life. I hope that he's found peace and tranquility. He seems to really like it where he is. I think that's a part of it. Part of his mental health was that he really want to come back to New York and do this New York thing, right? And have the mental anguish that comes with New York. I don't know. That would be a very interesting, an interesting question, right? So, like, I was looking at this thing about, rankings, quarterback rankings, and for some reason, every time I look at a quarterback ranking, I keep seeing Justin Herbert's name on the quarterback ranking. I keep seeing Josh Allen's name on the quarterback ranking. And it's not that I see their names on the quarterback ranking, is that I see their names above Lamar Jackson. And I just need to ask you people this question. How can you possibly put two guys who have not won championships, who have not been to championships, over a guy who is a two-time, almost unanimous MVP? And not like years ago, is literally the reigning MVP, right? Won it a few years ago, has now won it again, was just in the AFC Championship game. How do you still continually put Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen above him? I don't understand that. To me. So you can agree or disagree, but I've said this before. There's one tier. Tier one is Patrick Mahomes. Why is it tier one Patrick Mahomes? Because nobody else is doing what he's doing. And to put somebody on the same tier as him would be disrespectful to him. So if I'm making tiers based off of real football, he's tier one. Now, if we're talking fantasy, we can talk. But if we're talking about real football, he's tier one. Tier two is Lamar Jackson. And he's there by himself. Why? Because he is the two-time and reigning MVP. Tier three starts with all your other guys. Have at it. Have at it. That is my addendum to the tiers. Tier one, Patrick Mahomes. Tier two, Lamar Jackson. Tier three, everybody else. Trickle it down. You think I'm joking? You think I'm lying? Really? It's okay. I got some great things coming this summer, ladies and gentlemen. Great things coming. Great content coming. It's a busy summer. I'm a busy man this summer. I like being busy. I look forward to hanging out with you and bringing you more, showing you more things, giving you more content. Stick with me as we continue to roll through these iterations. Y'all know how the business goes, and as the business keeps ebbing, I'm going to keep flowing with it and keep bringing you more. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Coach Gene Clemens. This has been Talk Spicy. Rate us, review us, do all that good stuff, but make sure that you like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you retweet or resend or reshare, all of that, because that helps us to grow. And if you like what we're doing, and share it with the masses. Until next time, peace.